The following is a special presentation of the PDF Sports Network.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. Oh yes, it is a good morning. So we are approaching May. What an awesome time to be playing football. We actually had we have decent weather today. Yesterday was not decent weather, and we're going to go over the scores and such. What up? Good morning, everybody. See if everybody's tapping in. Say good morning. What up, what up? Okay, cool. So, yeah, as you can see, there's a little bit of a theme today. Got me all charged up today. We'll get to it, though. So, yesterday, we had... Let me get to it. Still loading. Good morning. Bam. Let's go to the scores. Here it is. The scores from yesterday. And now I have the backward thing going. So let's flip this. Bink. All right. Let's talk about it. So, and I can't really see with my glasses on. Go figure. Good. Shout out to Coach Prime and those awesome glasses. So, what do we got? We had some interesting action, or lack thereof, in the NEAFL, which I will get to in a second. Let me just prop this up so you can take a look. I'm just dropping my stuff everywhere. There it is. Boom. Cool. All right. So, let's talk about it. Big East, Golden Lions and Crusaders. It appears as though the Golden Lions did some type of rain dance in the preseason, which has caused every single one of their games to either have full-fledged full-fledged rain for the whole entire day. This one actually ended in the third quarter because of thunderstorms. Golden Lions were up 22-6. Player of the week for me right now. And of course, we have a little bit more football to play today. But so far, Rams Bleezy, heard 2 touchdowns. If my numbers are right, please let me know. But again, I'm just collecting the information now. It took a little bit longer than anticipated due to some folks not reporting on time today, because I think there were some antics in some of the leagues and such, including ECFL, but we'll get to that in a second. But Golden Lions take care of business. Crusaders are now, Crusaders are now in crisis mode when it comes to needing to win very, very quickly. If you look at the updated standings, which we'll do in a second, you'll see that they really do not have any more time to play around with them. Unfortunately, due to everything going on, that Bengals game especially earlier in the year, it's like for them the season that never really started. So, we'll see what the rest of the road for them provides. But right now, they are on life support. Today's game of the week, I'll be up there at Dietz Stadium in Kingston, New York, for the Green Wave Lions game. That's a 2:00 p.m. kick. HSG Network will be broadcasting that game live. We will be out there. Me and Dexter Gervin will be out there. I'm going to be with the on-field cam. So if you're playing in that one and you see me out there, I got the camera with me. Please make sure that your language is appropriate. We do have an audience that includes children and such, but definitely be intense, be yourselves, be personable and such. If you score a touchdown, come over and talk your stuff. In the last game, we had Dolphins and Black Panthers. This one ended prematurely as well, but spread maker on this one, 18.5. and the final score ended up being 24-6. I know there was some conversations yesterday about the dynamics of games ending early. That's unfortunately part of semi-pro football, so it kind of is what it is, and then you end up with the spreads and everything that we do Vegas style includes the possibility that some semi-pro stuff will happen. So that's what that is. So in the AFL, as you could see, the Vikings actually, as a heavy underdog, took a win against the Unit because of a field issue. Speaking of semi-pro stuff happening, the Unit, which are, the hottest team, I think, going at least in the NEAFL, possibly hottest team streak-wise in terms of playing football in the region. You could argue that. They had a field issue, ended up waiting about 45 minutes to an hour, and then the forfeit rule applied. So the Vikings end up with the win, which kind of scrambles up the playoff picture when it comes to some of the middle-ranked teams, which, again, we'll get to in a second. Wolfpack and the Tide, that lived up to its billings. Again, look at that spread maker doing this thing. Wolfpack ended up with a 6-point victory. Spread was 6.5 on that. 14-8 in a great game. Wolfpack way to battle back. I think the familiarity when you talk about rivalry football, you kind of throw the records out the window, but the Tide is now taken from the ranks of the unbeaten. So now we have only 4 teams left that are unbeaten in the region, and we'll get to that as well in a few. Speaking of unbeaten teams, the Militia, 33-0 over the Eagles. The Eagles are sliding fast. Militia handling business from week to week. Pretty much on point here, 33 points, and the over-under was 35.5. The Raptors, speaking of covering, they covered enough to play, I think, 3 or 4 weeks of football. They ended up beating a very much struggling Knights team, 79-0. Not much else to say with that one. And what was possibly could be the game of the week, entertainment-wise, the Bullies were up on the Owls. It was 14-0 or pretty close to that, 14-6. And the Owls came storming back and ended up winning that game 24-14. So, again, we said it earlier in the year, and as soon as we gave up on the narrative of the Owls being slow starters and then coming back and storming ahead at the end, they end up pulling off one of those signature Owl wins. So we shall see. So as the underdog, and that one they pulled out the victory, 24-14. ECFL action, Raiders obviously forfeited to the Chargers. So the Chargers picked up their first win of the year. The Raiders' last opponent is the Bruins, so the Bruins in their off week will also pick up a forfeit win in the ECFL. In games that were actually played on the field, the Cardinals made a big statement by blanking the Ducks 17-0 at the Ducks. So when you talk about pretenders and contenders, which we will in a few, that kind of... That's definitely a statement win that we got to talk about. The last game, which apparently there was some WWE action, the Bulldogs, this is the second time they had some WWE action. Maybe we can get comment from their owner, who last time with the old lady and the walker incident kind of smoothed it out and, said it was fake news or overreaction. Now there's more reports of brawls and melees and such. Maybe there was something here, maybe not. I don't know. But maybe we need to focus on playing football because it looked like it was a pretty good game. The Warhawks ended up winning 30-26. Conspicuously, there was no games that were filmed in the ECFL in terms of covered live this week. First time all season that has happened. So things that kind of make you go, is what it is. So let's turn to this week's schedule. So this week's schedule, May 3rd schedule, Golden Lions are at the Wolfpack. That's going to open up as a 10.5-point spread. Lions at the Crusaders. Crusaders are the underdogs, 9.5. That is the opening line for the thing. Obviously, that could change based on what we see from the Lions today. Vegas has the early odds, and with the extra day, we wanted to give you guys the information pretty quickly. So we set that spread at 9.5 right now. Again, we'll check it out after we see the Lions play today. Black Panthers and Bengals. Bengals are predicted to rebound in this one. Panthers have had a very tough schedule, hitting the road all year. Respect to those guys, struggling to finish games though. Not a good look. Bengals open up as an 8.5-point favorite, mostly because of semi-pro conditions, running the clock and stuff like that. Next up on the board is probably going to be the game of the week. And this is what I absolutely love about this year, is that the game of the week is not necessarily teams that are undefeated or one-loss teams. It could be the middle or the ones that are scrapping for that last playoff spot, and that's what we have this week when we have the Canes at the Dolphins. Besides being the two of the flyest teams around when it comes to uniforms, this one, young teams, scrappy teams, really good matchup, really even matchup. So that opens up as a 6.5-point edge for the Dolphins based on their performance yesterday. A little bit that could fluctuate. I mean, I think you could just as much justify, let's say, like a 2.5, 3.5 point spread on this one. But I think the line's pretty good on that one. It should be a one-score game if we're playing it right. And 28.5 is the over/under on that one. Turning to the NEAFL, the Knights and the Wolfpack. Well, the Knights are, let me just go to my inside information so I can give you the rundown on those games, on who we got today, or who we got next week in the NFL. Panthers, who are 4-2, versus the Militia, who are 6-0. Panthers have quietly put together a good year, and are in line to host a playoff game, which would be big. But unfortunately, they have to face a team right now that is dominating in the Militia. Militia have the highest scoring offense in the league, averaging almost 26 points a game, while they are 1 point behind the on top defense in the league. Panthers will keep this one close early, but the Militia will put them away. Militia open up as a 10.5-point favorite, over under 36.5. Just double checking the comments. All right. Yeah, the Raiders game was on point with the spread. Yes, indeed. Next up, Knights and the Wolfpack. Not much to write here. Credit to the Knights for showing up every week while losing by an average score of 39-0 each week. Wolfpack come off a huge win over previously undefeated Tide, which now leaves us with 4 unbeatens in the area. The Wolfpack should roll in this one and put pressure on the Panthers for the 2 seed. Pack at minus 30.5, over and under 30.5. So the spread maker is predicting another week of offenseless football for the Knights, who have not scored a point this year. There you go. Eagles 1-5 versus the Vikings at 2-4. The Eagles are coming off a 33-0 shellacking from the Militia, while the Vikings rule booked their way to a 21-0 forfeit win against the Unit. The Unit haven't won since week 1 against the lowly Knights. I'm sorry, not he said the Unit. The Eagles have not won since week 1 against the lowly Knights, while the Vikings haven't been impressive at all. This is going to be a competitive one to watch. So the Vikings have the edge in this one by minus 1.5. So that's interesting. Bullies 2-4 versus the Raptors at 3-4. The Raptors woke up an anemic offense. The Knights were the team to do that too, with an NEAFL record 79-0 win. The Bullies held a 14-0 lead against the Owls, but the Owls roared back for 24 unanswered points to get the win. Are the Bullies an afterthought when it comes to the American Conference? Luckily for them, they have the Vikings and the Bullies in their division, which makes making the playoffs a little bit easier. But hey, they will be one and done in the playoffs, prediction from our spread maker. As for this game against the Raptors have the ground game to punish the Bullies. The Bullies have lost their luster, and there is no time to find it. Raptors minus 6.5, over under 24.5. Next up, Owls and Tide. The Tide needed to win against the Wolfpack to keep with the Militia on pace for the number 1 seed. They failed to do that. The Wolfpack played spoiler and took the upset win. Now the Tide faced an Owls team that faced adversity in their game last week. against the defending champs, but came back to win. Are the real Owls finally here? That's been the question all season, it seems like. Are the Tide for real, or has the clock struck midnight for Cinderella? Love that one. Eagles Vikings have playoff applications too. Yes, indeed. Tide at minus 2.5. Over under is 29.5. The spread maker has this as an Owl upset special in the making. And the unit go into the bye week after the disappointing forfeiting issue. So let's talk about it really quickly. Now, overall, here we go. This is what I have in the leagues, right? This is what I got. Are they contenders or pretenders? Let's talk about it. So Big East, obviously on the left, militia. The NEFL in the middle, and the ECFL on the right. So the contenders across the board, we got Green Wave, Golden Lions. I'm willing to keep the Wolfpack in there. Wolfpack have been quiet lately, but still I'll put them up in the contenders. And the Kingston Lions. Contenders in the NEAFL, Militia, Unit, and Tide. And then in the ECFL, it's kind of shaping up to be a two-horse race between the Falcons and the Warhawks, who bounced back this week with a win. Tell me which ones you agree with. So now the in the hunt ones, these are teams that I think are going to make the playoffs, but would I put money on them being in the championship game, let alone winning it? Probably not. So in the Big East, again, if you get a playoff win, let's say you get knocked out in the semifinals, I think you pretty much have held to standard, so to speak. You have the Bengals, the Hurricanes, and the Dolphins right now. The ones that I think have pretty much, as our spread maker said, the clock has struck midnight, and for Cinderella, it's time to go home, is the Crusaders and, of course, the Black Panthers. In the AFL, the contenders, which was jammed up in our last episode, now has kind of evened out, and we have some of the teams that are kind of like in a second tier now that has been created. Wolfpack, TC Panthers, Raptors, Bullies, and I'm even going to move the Owls up there after their big comeback win this past weekend. I'm not counting the Bullies out yet, but I think they're one loss away from being bumped to the next year box. In the next year box, it's the Eagles, Vikings, and, of course, the Knights, who have even scored a point this year. Over in the ECFL, again, two-horse race with the Falcons and the Warhawks. In the hunt, the Dogs and the Ducks, who've just been inconsistent. Like, they get a huge... Their ups and downs have been absolutely crazy. Absolutely crazy. And then you have the Cardinals, who have, out of the three of them, been the most consistent of late after an 0-2 start. So that in the hunt group is a very interesting group. It's just a matter of if whoever catches the Ducks or the Dogs. Now, here's the thing. Out of these three, only two of them are going to make it. So if it's the Ducks or the Dogs, do you catch them on one of these great days and then end up having your year ended in an upset in that 1-4 game or 2-3 game, right? Or do you end up facing a Cardinals team, which, again, their peak might not be the peak of what you've seen out of the Ducks and the Dogs this year, but you know that it's going to be a competitive game. Either the Ducks or the Dogs are getting in, I should say. So that's going to be the most intriguing storyline, I think, going into the ECFL playoffs, is going to be which one of these two teams are good, like which out of these two teams, which one of their two teams is going to show up. The team that rallies and gets big wins and plays intense caliber football, or the team that ends up putting up a goose egg against teams that, when you anticipate that it's going to be a good game, they end up falling short in the spotlight and such. So that's what I have for contenders and pretenders. And I'm checking the comments. Talk to me. Next, I'm going to go over the playoff picture. It's about 10:30 right now. And then we're going to talk about the social end of this thing. And I'm not going to go on a diatribe about Shador. I already did that on my own personal page a bunch of times. However, I'm going to connect it to, semi-pro minor league football. Absolutely. So let's keep it moving. Let's talk about the playoff picture real quick. Playoff picture in the Big East. This is where we're at. Golden Lions at 5-0, Wave at 4-0. The only reason why, again, is because they have the extra win. As soon as the Wave get the win today, if that's what happens, then they would go to 1 because 5-0 and 5-0. I thought you were coming up north. I am. I'm definitely going to be there up north. I don't have to be for a Kingston. I don't need a hotel or anything like that. Appreciate it. Thank you. So, if the Wave win today, they're in the 1 seed. Again, the tiebreaker. This 1-2 thing is going to be decided the last week of the season if everybody holds serves, and that's what it's going to be. But again, if you want to go technically speaking, the Wave are going to be the 1 seed if they win today. Because of points allowed or what have you, as Molly said in his live. So let's take a look at the rest of the field here. You have the Wolfpack at 3-1. That's who they have left. Bengals at 2-2. This is going to be the tricky one because the Bengals have by far the hardest schedule going here on out. So can they hold that 4 spot or at least cling to a 5 or a 6? Because there's a lot of company on the outside looking in. And again, what I love about this season is that there is so many storylines dealing with this section of the standings, which we've not seen recently, at least, but maybe not even ever. Or maybe this wasn't covered. I don't know. Shout out to the media on that. So you have the Kingston Lions, who are playing today. If they win, they go to 3-1, and now we're talking about them as the number 3 team and moving over here and kind of sliding everybody back, and that puts the Bengals, the Canes, the Crusaders, and the Dolphins on that bubble between those 4, right? That's a big if. Again, if the Kingston Lions lose, then it's 2-2, and then kind of like the Wolfpack start to separate themselves, and now this middle, the back end of the league ends up being the 4, 5, 6, and then you have Bengals, Kingston Lions, Canes, and then really Dolphins, because Crusaders picked up another loss, so I'm going to slide them over. So then it's at that point 4 teams going for 3 spots, because the Wolfpack, I think, are pretty solid at this point with their remaining schedule, including a game against the Black Panthers. They should be able to win that game, obviously. And they do have a game against the Bengals, which they'll be going in as the favorites. So if they go in there as 5, even if they lose to the Golden Lions, if they finish out with a 5-2 record, they're taking a playoff spot. The Bengals, it's a harder road for them, obviously, if they lose out, which, as you saw on the show, the Thursday show this week, a lot of people predicted them to lose out. That puts them at 2-5. So that means that at 2-5, if Kingston wins today, they pretty much have locked in more than likely a home game for the playoffs. On the back end of this thing, you have the Canes. Now the Crusaders, with another loss, they stand at 0-4 and are at this point in crisis mode. And when you're in crisis mode and you have the Kingston Lions, Green Wave, and then finish out with the Dolphins, that's going to be an issue. So right now they look like they are on life support. Hey, what up, Mason? The other team on the outside looking in would be the Dolphins. The Dolphins picked up a big win, their first win of the season. And now we set up with this game of the week with the Dolphins and the Canes. The winning team for that goes to 2 wins, 2-3. And with the 2-3 kind of slides into the 5, possibly moving into the 4. Possibly moving into the 4 if Kingston ends up falling off. But basically, that's a playoff game this week. That's definitely the game of the week. And with that, I definitely want to check out the Hurricanes and actually do a Dolphins Bleezy breakdown when it comes to what they're doing on the X's and O's. So that should be interesting. And that's the way the Big East unfolds right now. So let's talk NAFL. You got the 1 seeds, Militia, and the Unit. up top, the 2 seeds. The 2 seed over here, the Tide, again, they're only 1 game back, which is also pretty intriguing too, because the difference between who you're going to see as a 1 versus who you're going to see as a 2 is going to be drastically different in terms of quality on the American side of things. On the national side of things, it's going to end up with a tough team as well. So if you're a 2 seed over here, then you might end up with a first round matchup against the Wolfpack. You might not want to have that matchup as your first round matchup. Over here, Unit would play the Raptors. The Raptors are a surging team. Panthers are also a really tough team. This is a tough bracket right here on the national side of things. This is very impressive. Panthers Wolfpack would be a heck of a game with both those teams being 4-2. So they could be kind of interchangeable with the 2 or the 3. They'll be fighting it out. Let's see who they have left. Panthers have the Militia. That's going to be tough. Wolfpack also have the Militia. That's going to be tough. So if we go by favorites winning and holding serve, then both of them go 4-3. And then the real tiebreaker on who's going to be hosting this 2-3 game is going to be that Panthers versus Panthers versus Tide game the last week of the season. They're going to be playing for a home playoff game. The Wolfpack have the Knights. The Knights aren't really going to, the Knights aren't doing anything in that one. Up here, Raptors have the Bullies left, and then they go into trying to prepare to knock off the Unit, and they take it from there. On the other side of things, you got Militia and the Bullies. Bullies have the Raptors and the Eagles left, so they have a chance to improve their positioning. The Owls sit at the 3 seed right now, so depending on how they do with the Tide, that's going to be the determining factor on whether they end up playing against a 2 or playing against a 1. And then in the hunt over here, the Vikings, can the Vikings pull off something? Well, if they get a 3rd win against the Eagles, that's going to make this very interesting, because with 3 wins, they could bump the 4 or the 3. Since the Owls and the Bullies do not play each other, they both technically could lose out. And then, obviously, the Knights are out of contention on this thing. Technically, on this side as well, the Eagles have been eliminated because they cannot... Bullies, no. Oh, they're not technically eliminated. If they lose this week, they're definitely eliminated. So they have a path to 3 wins. But as soon as the Raptors end up with a 4th win, then that would eliminate the Eagles, because they would not be able to get to 3 wins at that point. Well, 3 wins, they would tie. Anyway, ECFL playoff picture. Let's talk about it. Again, it's the top 2. The Falcons, who have the Ducks and the Hawks left. The Warhawks have the Falcons left. Cardinals have the Chargers. They're going to go into that as heavy favorites. So that puts them to 5-2. So here's where the setup is. So you have Warhawks and Cardinals at the 2 and the 3. If the Falcons beat the Warhawks, right, then you're going to end up with a 2-loss Warhawks team and a 2-loss Cardinals team. And the team that has I have to double check to see who has the tiebreaker if they have a head-to-head matchup. But also with 2 losses over here is the Ducks. So they're going to go through tiebreaker country crazy over here. Also, if the Falcons lose to the Warhawks, which would be very interesting, and we end up with a 6-1, 6-1, then the Warhawks would go to the 1, and then Falcons would go to 2, and that would set up Falcons-Cardinals or Falcons-Ducks, depending on how this sorts itself out. And then on the offshoot over here, the Bulldogs have finished their season because they have their last game against the Raiders, who have folded. So they finish out at 4-3. So as soon as the Bulldogs beat the Ducks, so with the same record, the Ducks would be bumped out. Cardinals, I'd have to double check on this one too. We're going to do a further breakdown on this one. If the Cardinals Bulldogs head to head, what happens then? But again, that would be if the Cardinals were to lose to the Chargers. Don't really see that happening. So the real conversation is this Bulldogs-Ducks. if they both end up at 4-3. What happens there? Oh, the Bulldogs, I believe, beat the Ducks, so the Ducks would be knocked out. So we have playoff football this week. The Ducks are playing for their lives, and their 17-0 donut this week at home absolutely did a lot of damage, because if they would have won against the Cardinals, they would have clinched a playoff spot. So now it's between the Ducks and the Bulldogs for that last spot. Bruins finish with the Chargers. They're 1-5 because of the forfeit win against the Raiders. The Raiders, of course, are eliminated as well, and the Chargers are eliminated as well. They have the Bruins and the Cardinals left, mathematically speaking, and that's pretty much it. Boom. All right, so I'm going to check the comments real quick, and then we'll talk about what's going on. Let me double check. And as we're talking here, I might need to move a little closer because I got the board working here, right? Cool. All right. So, that's backwards. Hold on. Gotta get this right, because there's a lot of people, a lot of chatter over this. Let's see if this works. Yeah, if I gotta move you closer, I will. Oh, that's not going to work because you're facing the wrong direction. That wasn't all that bright. All right, so let's talk about it. A lot of conversations regarding the Shedeur Sanders draft situation. So we're going to go over this real quick, and yeah, I don't like the distance on this. Let me get you a better seat. Let's get you a better seat, shall we? All right. So, double standards or power struggles. So there was a lot of things that were spoken about when it came to the Shedeur Sanders situation. Race being the first one. A lot of people got very defensive and said, oh, talking about race again and such. And a lot of people were like, oh, it's a power struggle. There's just a couple things, and I'm not gonna tell you how to think. I'm not gonna do that. What I will do is I'll just ask you some simple questions based on what I see, and just to see if we're seeing the same thing. So when Shedeur dropped in the draft, and let's be clear on the type of drop that is occurring, because regardless of your political affiliations, when you have a quarterback who is ranked the number 2 QB in the draft, right? The number 2 ranked QB in the draft is expected to be chosen above a certain number. Now, that number could vary based on how strong the quarterback class is. However, never, ever, ever has the number 2 ranked quarterback overall in the draft been selected in the 5th round. That has not happened. So it's funny that some of my colleagues from different sides of the aisle, so to speak, kind of ignored that what we were seeing was an unprecedented occurrence. And I just feel as though if you see something that is occurring for the first time in history and you act as though it is regular, then that's going to kind of set off the bells and whistles, and I'm wondering why. Especially when, in light of so many different political occurrences that have occurred. So, for example, one of the last big conspiracy issues was the vaccine when it came to COVID. It was a very sensitive issue from everybody. And when somebody would die, whether it be like a 90-year-old man of cancer, or when somebody would get hit by a bus, the first thing out of certain people's mouths were, well, were they vaccinated? Because if they were vaccinated, the vaccine might have killed them and such. And then when you looked at the actual statistics and numbers of the likelihood of you being killed by the vaccine, the way in which people twisted and turned and tried to make it into a narrative that it wasn't, based on actual people that went to medical school. You're like, well, you're going so far-fetched with this thing, with the whole conspiracy theories. But now you have a situation where something unprecedented happened in like 80 some odd years, and the same people were like, yeah, that sounds about right. So why is it that, I mean, if you don't like the guy, just say you don't like the guy. But when it comes down to it, what was the issue? So if he was the number 2 ranked QB in the draft, and I think his rating, pardon, I'm actually going to pull this up because I think it's that important, because there were so many people arguing about this and debating it. When it came to the NFL prospect, when it came to the NFL prospect comparison, he was like just under, like by a fraction of percentage, Baker Mayfield. And you saw how high Baker Mayfield went. So there was nobody that you could compare him to legitimately, if you know anything about football, that would justify him going anything other than the first round. He was even higher rated than Jalen Hurts, and Jalen Hurts was an early second round pick. So what happened? He's a pocket passer. Well, we've seen pocket passers go early, and the number 2 ranked pocket passer does not go in the 5th round. Competition. Now, this was the crazy thing. People started analyzing Colorado's schedule as though Carson Wentz, and who was the other quarterback from South Dakota State that got chosen by the San Francisco 49ers, went to a small school. There's been plenty of quarterbacks that have been selected in the first round that have come from schools that do not nearly play the competition that the top national championship teams play. Keep in mind, when it comes to competition, there's 2 sides of it. The first side is, yeah, did he play Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee week in and week out? No, he didn't. But at the same time, how many NFL players did he share the field with on his side? How many NFL linemen did he have blocking for him? 0. How many NFL receivers did he have? 1. How many NFL running backs did he have to take the load off in terms of his ability to move the offense? 0. Like, how much help did he have NFL-wise? Right? Did he play against NFL talent? Look at the Big 12. Big 12 absolutely had players that were drafted. Now, the teams that he was playing, he's playing against NFL talent without NFL talent on his team. So for you to say that it's a competition issue is absolutely insane. He took a team that was completely dysfunctional and incompetent for 2 decades and made them into a national story. And if he ended up with a 500 record, yeah, compared to where they were 3-4 years ago, where they weren't winning a single game all year, 500 is an absolute dream compared to that. So what are we really talking about? His size. Well, if you actually look at his size, he is taller and has more weight than a lot of players, including a certain player that plays out of, the Carolina Panthers, and Kyler Murray with the Cardinals. I'm forgetting his name right now. Help me out with it. You know what I'm talking about. So there's players that were drafted in the first round, smaller than him. They went first round. Again, but we're still talking about the gap between the first round and the 5th round, which is insane. His record. Again, he took a team from a 0-win team to a bowl-eligible team and went to a bowl game. Participation in the combine. This was the other thing that came up with a lot of rounds of stupidity to it, which is, if you look at the number 2 ranked QB in the draft, right? The number 2 QB in the draft hardly ever participates in the combine at all. And the ones that do only, if I have a strong arm and I'm trying to move from 2 to 1, I'll throw at the combine. If there's a question about a certain part of my game, then I'll work on that and then I'll do that at the combine. But the number 2 quarterback in the draft, the number 2 prospect is, Bryce Young, thank you. That's what I was thinking of. But the number 2 quarterback in the draft doesn't go to the combine. They do their pro days. He literally did everything like everybody else. He didn't do his own thing. If you actually look to see people that were similarly situated as him, he operated the same exact way. So his brother Shiloh, who ended up getting picked up by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Shiloh was not a top prospect. That's why he went to the Senior Bowl and played in the Senior Bowl, whatever the heck they're calling it now. That's why he did he wanted to go to the combine. That's why he did extra pro days. That's why he went through all these extra evaluative devices, because he wasn't the number 2 ranked safety in the nation that was coming out. So what are we really talking about here? So then after you sit here and you address all this stuff, and it turns out that the complete argument that people are making is utter bullshit, then it turns into these code words. Now this is where the race element comes into it. And people start getting all antsy and all uncomfortable and such. But let's talk about it. So then all of a sudden, when you don't actually have facts to sustain your hatred for the dude and you wanting to see the dude fail, now you go to this side over here, his attitude. And the reason why you say his attitude is because you cannot measure attitude. Attitude is not a measurable. Attitude is not something that you can rate in a way that's going to be objective. It's a very subjective thing. So if you just don't like somebody, you can just claim their attitude as something that does not appeal to you, and you take it from there. However, if we were to talk about the man's attitude, his teammates never had an issue with his attitude. His coaches, his father's side, the coaches that have all been spoken about, including the staff that Prime has at Colorado, who have experience on the NFL level, all said top-notch locker room guy, top-notch character guy. So when we were talking about the attitude, and the attitude came out in these bad interviews, who said that their interview was bad? It was anonymous sources. Nobody that would actually put their name to it. Again, you see how the power dynamic goes? So the NFL pulled a power dynamic. Now, some teams, I'm not going to say the whole NFL, because the Philadelphia Eagles don't need a quarterback to like that high. And they don't need a quarterback that's going to compete for the starting job. So just like the Kansas City Chiefs. If you go to the Kansas City Chiefs, you just understand that you're there to sit, get some film together in the preseason, and probably go somewhere else to try to compete. And you're basically trade bait. So to put him in a situation to be trade bait wasn't really, again, appropriate for the number 2 ranked quarterback in the draft. So let's talk about it. The teams that were in line to get a quarterback to actually compete to start: the Raiders, the Giants, the Browns. There's a couple other teams in there as well. And those teams absolutely showed why they are piss-poor organizations. The Giants even went so far as to move up from the second round to the first round to pick a player in Jackson Dart that nobody else was going to pick him. So you actually gave up capital in a year in which Joe Shane and Brian Daboll are coaching and selecting and making decisions for their employment lives. And they chose somebody in the first round. They used a first round pick on somebody that is not going to touch the field if they're successful. And I told this to a bunch of people, including Juan Pena, during the, but before, when, it is a very bad look. I told a bunch of people, a bunch of Giants fans before the draft, what you need to do is move up as far as you can with your second round picks and third round picks, make them first round picks, make them second round picks, and you need to pick at least 3 starters. You need 3 starters that are ready to be plug and play guys week 1, because you need to win games right now. And then you use a first round pick on somebody who, if they touch the field, it's because everything has gone wrong and you're not going to have a job. Of course, next year, you might not have a job during the year. You might get fired during the year. So that made absolutely no sense whatsoever. So anybody who's making that, trying to fit that into a dynamic that makes sense, this is where we're going to make the transition from power struggle to racism. And I know You don't want to talk about it, but I'm going to talk about it. Let's talk about his father's participation, because this gets the transition even easier. And I'm not just talking about it because I'm a big-time Prime fan. For a long time, as you can see, the jersey behind me is actually older than most of the players, actually all of the players nearly that are playing semi-pro football right now. His father's participation. Now, could that be a power struggle thing? Absolutely. And for people that are not as keenly aware to race dynamics, father's participation could be a power struggle issue. However, when you actually look at the history of it, and I'm pretty qualified to talk about the history of it, the Mannings did the same exact thing. If you actually look, let's talk about it. If you look at draft day for Eli Manning, since they couldn't
details right now, we've made our decision, and that's what we're sticking to.
When your name is called, what are you gonna do? Why don't you want to play for the Chargers?
He didn't say anything other than, we made our decision. Look who's standing next to him. His daddy. Did you see Prime standing next to Shador on draft day? No, you didn't.
Play for the Chargers.
We're not really giving details right now. We've made our decision, and that's what we're sticking to.
When your name is called, what are you going to do?
Again, I don't know what's going to happen right now. I don't know what the Chargers are going to do. So, if my name's called first or whenever it's called, I'm going to do what everybody else does.
First choice in the 2004 NFL Draft, the San Diego Chargers select.
So now we're going to, okay, what's the difference? Actually, that's worse. And by the way, don't think he didn't do that with Eli Manning as well. I'm sorry, with Peyton Manning as well. Let's go to this one right here, because this isn't the first time. Anniversary of John Elway. His dad, Jack, absolutely wasn't having him go to the Baltimore Colts. And his father threatened the Colts to not trade him, or he'll end up playing professional baseball and won't play football at all. Refused. Absolutely refused. Did press conferences about refusing and forced. Let me read. The Denver Broncos made the most important move in franchise history May 2nd, 1983, when they finalized a trade with the Baltimore Colts to acquire quarterback John Elway. Before the draft, Elway informed the Colts he would not play for them, but the team picked him anyway after failing to trade the number 1 overall pick before going on the clock. A few days later, they reached an agreement with the Broncos to trade Elway to Denver. Now I'm asking you, what's the difference? What's the difference? What am I missing? Now, again, I haven't mentioned race yet. The Mannings did the same exact thing. If you actually look, I haven't mentioned race yet. However, it's not hard to see the difference in the father that we're talking about here and the two fathers that did the same exact thing, one in the 80s and one in the 90s, and nobody had an issue with it. Again, please correct me where I'm wrong. Chime in. So that brings us to this part. This is where I'm going to come to my conclusion. We're going to keep it moving, right? All of this was just to teach him a lesson, because the same energy, and this is where the race component comes in, the same energy that is common in certain communities is just not going to be accepted out of the black community, especially the black community with arrogance. Same thing happens in terms of women as well, by the way. A woman that is more aggressive is the angry woman, especially black women. And some of y'all just let people talk about black women like that. They're just angry and aggressive, and they're flying off the handle. It's such a negative thing. But the same attributes when it comes to Anglo males, or males in general, are, assertive, confident. Same thing. So they're trying to teach them a lesson. And this dynamic, which triggered a lot of people, especially African-American men, like myself, was harking back to George Floyd, which is when it happened, there were a lot of people that were saying, just comply. This had just comply vibes. Why does he have to do all this for your interview when you didn't ask anybody else to do the same exact thing? He's not asking for special treatment. He's asking you not to treat him differently just because you have not seen this type of confidence out of a young man like that. And the same population has screamed about DEI for the last few months, the last 80-something days, 100 days. And the whole premise behind the anti-DEI movement, which is more short-sighted because half y'all don't know what DEI actually is or what it does. The purpose for anti-DEI, as some of the people here even claim on their own pages, is to make sure that the most qualified people get the job. So let me go back to the point. Is the number 2 quarterback rated in the draft the most qualified person for the job? Yes. Before you even say who the person's name is, where they're from, whatever, if they are the number 2 quarterback rated by every expert around, after everything has been considered, don't tell me about what the owners or the GMs eventually ended up doing, because all that is part of the process of the rating. They talk to NFL executives to get the rating. They look at the type of passer they are, and that's included in the rating. They look at the competition they played. That's part of the ranking. They look at his size, their record, and participation in the combine. All of that is included in the rating. So we end up with a rating that places him, qualification-wise, as the number 2 quarterback in the draft. And he goes in the 5th round at the 144th pick. How are you not screaming bloody murder? Because you are the one that said that the most qualified person should get the position, regardless of race, creed, color, blah, 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 blah. That's what you said. So that's what I'm missing. And that is pretty much it. So I appreciate spending the time. I will be out at the Green Wave game versus the Kingston Lions up at Dean Stadium. Looking forward to it. I have not been to the stadium since it has been renovated, so look forward to that. I will definitely be there early. The game's going to be on HSG Network. HSG is linked to YouTube. It is live. Make sure you comment in. If there's a question you want to ask or a camera angle that you want me to get, absolutely let me know, and we will take it from there. I'm checking the comments one last time. I think everybody's kind of marinating, and I'll get all the... Some of y'all don't want to comment because it's a little too heavy, but I had to this morning. There was no way that y'all were going to talk about the guy like that, and I'm going to let that run. Yes. So I got the number 2 jersey from way back when, because the Browns have been ruining quarterbacks for years now. But I did pre-order my Shador jersey. I'm also going to pre-order my Shiloh jersey. I'm not sure if he's going to end up with the Buccaneers or where he'll end up, but I definitely will support as well. And some of you guys, again, before talking, just make sure you know the history on it, and then you kind of take it from there. All right, y'all. For another episode of Way Too Early with Pat. Later.